Hi there, and welcome back to Questions Montgomery County Should Be Asking. I previously shared with you how over the last 10 years, more than $276 million more was collected in revenue than what was planned. So our next question in this series is, where did all that money go? And the good news is we don't have to guess, and we don't have to assume. But we do have to dig through a lot of financial reports. I went through the county's own financial reports year by year. And while it was easy to see when revenue collected was higher than expected, it was not as easy to see those expenditure details. So the county sets a budget at the beginning of the year. But when more money is received, more money is collected than what is expected, the budget doesn't stay the same. It gets adjusted, and funds get transferred, and allocations get changed throughout the year. So you're not going to find a single line item that says, oh, extra revenue spent here. Instead, it gets spread out through the entire system. Now, here's a geek warning. I'm going to dive into the data. I'm going to throw a lot of numbers out there, but we want to just make sure you understand. The early years was clear. In 2015, there was a total net position increase by $18 million. And in 2016, that jumped to nearly $30 million. The fund balances rose significantly from $267 million to $301 million. And our unassigned general fund reserves went from 53% to 60% of expenditures. Now in 2017, there was a slight shift, a slight dip if we'll call it. The net position decreased by $45 million and our fund balance declined slightly. But even then, unassigned reserves remained at that 60% of expenditures. So total balances stayed near $296 million. Then we see a structural change. In 2018, this is where the system changed and sales tax increased for the first time in 30 years. Property values rose 4.6% through a reappraisal that drove revenue up 5.1%. And in 2019, sales tax revenue jumped $19.5 million in 1 year. That's not organic. That's a policy-driven increase in revenue. Now, multiple factors start hitting, and in 2020, property values increased by $3.5 billion in our county. And in 2021, those real estate transactions exploded with over 30,000 transaction transfers, which was an increase of 43%, and a $2.9 billion in total transactions. The transfer fee revenue increased accordingly. Revenue turned into growth asset as we look forward in 2022. Investment income jumped significantly. Our portfolio increased $59.5 million. And in 2023, investments increased another $45.4 million. With an additional $5 million in income generated. In 2024, our portfolio increased another $55.2 million for our total investment holdings reaching over $302 million. This is no longer just revenue. This is accumulated financial growth. Now, what those reports do not show, nowhere in these reports do you see a reduction in tax burden tied to those higher collections. No return of excess funds to the taxpayers, nor a structural reset after a high revenue year. But when we step back and we look at all of this in a full picture, the pattern is very clear. Spending increased across nearly every category. The law enforcement, administration, social services, development, all at the same time, the county's financial position grew significantly. The total net position increased by over $376 million. Our investment portfolios grew into the hundreds of millions of dollars, and fund balances remained very strong. The system didn't return the money, it absorbed it. And here's where our taxpayer frustration comes in. Because while the county is getting stronger financially, many residents are feeling the opposite. Property tax bills keep rising. Families are adjusting their budgets, picking up extra work, making harder financial decisions just to keep up. And at the same time, they're still driving over potholes. Some are still seeing blight in their neighborhood, and others are still waiting for real, visible improvements in their communities. When we talk about service versus revenue, if revenue increased because services cost more, then we should see an increase in the level of services being delivered. But that's not what the county reports show. Over time, road resurfacing dropped by 60%. Jail bookings declined by 30%, and there were 40% less court case volume. And building permits and inspections did not show consistent growth either. So again, while revenue was increasing, the demand for many core services was not increasing at the same pace, and in some cases, it was actually declining. That means the additional revenue was not driven by a sudden need for more services. It was driven by the system itself, rising property values, reappraisals, and increased economic activity. And when that additional money came in, it didn't stay separate. It didn't get returned. The budget adjusted, spending expanded, and the system absorbed it. Now granted, some costs do rise over time, like labor, materials, and infrastructure, but those increases do not explain the scale and consistency of the revenue growth that we've seen in the last 10 years. The data does not show a need-based increase in revenue, it shows a system-based increase. So again, when revenue grows faster than service demand, and spending grows to match that revenue, that's not a response to a need. That's a system that expands because it can. This isn't about whether Montgomery County is strong financially. It is. The question is whether the strength is being translated into something meaningful for the people who are paying into the system. Because right now, what the data shows is this. The system generates more revenue automatically, spending adjusts to use it, and the financial position continues to grow. But for many residents, it still feels like they're being asked to carry more burden without seeing a return. In our next episode, we'll discuss who decides when enough is enough. Thank you for watching, and as always, please like, share, and send us your comments, questions, or ideas. We look forward to helping you in the future.